All right, probably get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Hill, and I am the founder of Toilet Tech. Started in British Columbia, did my PhD on challenges park operators were having with human waste management up in the Alpine primarily. And I did a pile of research in the Bugaboos and in the Canadian Rockies, sort of the Alberta side, a little bit in Yoho, down in Mount Rainier, down in Washington, where I now live. And sort of the high-level conclusions of that PhD research were that human pee and human poo were never meant to go together. And the only reason they really ended up together was because of the invention of the toilet seat in order to get human waste out of, some of our kind of medieval castles and places where people were throwing it out the window into the streets and generating terrible disease like Black Plague and such. So let's put it into a hole, get it out, send it into the river, and it'll be gone. And that toilet seat convention followed us through till today. You go and flush all of your waste down to the wastewater treatment plant, and it still goes in the river. The solids fraction gets pulled out usually, but and if you look out, you're all wandering around in the woods these days, and you can see that animals do not pee on their poo. They pee in one spot and they poo in a different spot, and it's actually reasonably difficult to go and while dropping your friends off to step backwards and end up peeing on them. So this is better when I can actually do a bit of a dance that I'm getting dripped on by my roof too, so it's not like I'm crying. So the point of the toilet seat is to divert pee from poo, and when you do that, the urea that's in urine does not oxidize into ammonia, and it's instead, most places sent straight into the soil, and plants and microbes will uptake the nitrogen into biological material, and you don't get that terrible smell of ammonia that comes out through most pit toilets, vault toilets, and wood chip composting toilets, because the urea does not change to ammonia. And when you do that, you have this solid waste product that's incredible amounts of toilet paper and small amounts of poo. And when you don't have that signal of ammonia, then it's just a food source for invertebrates primarily, who are eating it, just like they eat plant litter. So the reason why the earth is not 300 foot thick of dead plant material is because invertebrates eat plant material. And then bacteria and fungi and whatever breaks down the poo of the invertebrate. So that's the basis, that's the intent of the system. There are really simple urine separation systems, which are a little pee hole in the front and a bigger poo hole in the back. I put those into Skaha and a few other BC Park sites, and they clogged within days. And the park operators were very angry with me. I'm literally sitting right underneath a drip. I think I gotta move a little bit. Because they had to go out and use a chopstick to get poo out of the pee hole. That was terrible. So I found a system in France that I will show you today. And I now sell this urine diverting conveyor belt toilet system in North America. BC Parks probably has more than any other public agency. And so the point of today's webinar is to go through kind of basic servicing as well as some troubleshooting. And I'm probably not going to touch on installation, but if anyone does want to talk about installation, I am building a building in the background right now, so it works out well if you want to see what it would be like to kind of put it in and install it. This building is for Whistler. No, that's not true. This building is for a Girl Scout camp in California. The Whistler one comes next. So happy to talk through design details too of buildings. Anyone have anything to add before we jump in? Most of you are on mute. Wow, it's like a well-trained bunch of WebExers, Zoom meeting callers. Okay, so I'll just jump in. This, what you see right here, I've also got it on this other phone here to give a different view. There might be a sound problem that comes up, so I'll just manage that as it comes. So when you come up to a toilet that is a Toiletech system, depending on who installed it and how they installed it, you will need to get the toilet seat off to do kind of the key maintenance. There is some maintenance to do from the back, but there is some maintenance you cannot do from the back, which is important. So there's a variety of methods that people have used that I've seen to fix the toilet riser to the wall or to the floor so that people don't steal it and mess with it. And sometimes that's just people driving screws through it on different angles, or sometimes there's been trim pieces installed around the sides and the top and the back. So you have to bring enough screwdriver bits to make sure you have the right one to take the seat out. And I can't help you with that. Chris McCrum, who was a good friend of mine and really helped me get this business off the ground in Squamish, tended to use Torx. So make sure you bring some Torx. Get the seat off, and I'll start going through the steps. You probably want to do a cleaning because you just put your hand right in the toilet. And here we have, oh yeah, we got some good views here. Okay, so this right here is the urine tray. And after you've done your cleaning up here in the top, you can run the foot pedal a little bit to bring some of the debris that you've just cleaned down the toilet hole out to the end of the conveyor. Just pump it a few times. And then your next step is going to be to check the urine tray. And this is really one of the most critical steps to making these things long lasting and successful. I've got 5/16 socket driver, which is way better than using the end of a knife to turn these hose clamps. So you turn the hose clamp until you can loosen the plumbing. So this is a 1 1/4, 1.5 inch rubber reducer, or expander, whichever way you're looking at it. And this piece actually is not going to come out. It's going to be stuck to the plumbing that's inside. So it'll be inside there, connected to your urine discharge plumbing. And what you're doing is freeing up this guy right here, so that when you undo the wing nut, don't lose these parts. I have some sort of little tray or even a little baggie. Put it over there, because they can fall down the cracks of some of the floors that the toilets are built with, and then your SOL. So you pull the tray out. Now you can see a little bit, I've had to change the angle of this thing as it comes out. And if it's filled up with clogged debris, and it makes a little lake of urine. And so if you've taken too long to service and maintain this, then you will have a small lake and a small urine tidal wave coming out of it when you pull it out. So if that happens, you've left it too long. One of Sam's questions was, how frequently do you need to do this service? It's dependent on a bunch of factors, most of which is use, and if people are dumping extra crap into here. So if they're putting food waste into the toilet and oatmeal sludge and terrible mountain house meals that nobody likes, then a lot of that crap ends up in here. And then you got to service it more frequently, or put up more signs that say, don't put only your real crap, not your other crap. Okay, so what you do then is you clean it out, or if you've done it frequently enough, there'll just be a bunch of gunky debris on here with teeny tiny bits of toilet paper and whatever else. So you get your gloves on, so not already on. You pull this out and you replace it with your favorite flavor. I think this is lavender. I think this is cucumber. And then there's a stainless steel nail that I stick in there, and that just goes inside of the hole to make sure that when you're messing about with this thing in the installation process, it keeps the mat over top of the hole. So that's about it. I clean these out, put the new thing back in. You can reuse the thing, I guess, if you want to, but that'd be kind of gross to clean it. And then when you're sliding it back in, I'm often kneeling on the ground and using two hands, my elbows supporting my upper body, and one hand is pushing it in from the front and my other hand is reaching in. You can't reach around the back because it's installed, but you just reach around the other side and you're trying to wiggle this thing and get it back into its right spot. You just use your eyes and you can see. If you don't look at it and you're not paying too much attention, it'll be tipped down too far. And this, you can see here. So this guy right here is the urine overflow, and it needs to be up here through the holster. So you go back out. Oh, I can't video record and do a two-hand operation at the same time. So using two hands, one hand twisted from the front, the other one lifting from the back. And then it goes into place. You do your wing nut back in. And then you do up your plumbing hose clamp, which are in here. So this guy goes back in there. I put the hose clamps on the top so they're easy to get to for the next time and the next person. And if you put them underneath, it kind of messes up the angle of drainage and discharge. So that's about it for basic maintenance. The other thing you might end up doing from the backside of the building, you go in through the waste space, you end up back here, and there can be a lot of debris, toilet paper and poopy stuff hanging off. If the belt is clean, you don't really need to clean off the scraper. It's fine as a sort of standard procedure, but when you start seeing a bunch of streaks, big ugly poo streaks happening in here that don't get cleaned off, then it's likely because there's some big wad of material that's keeping this scraper off the belt. So that's really important. There's two ways. You can just take a paint stick or some not so sharp object and debride the conveyor belt back here. Sometimes it helps to lever this away with one hand while you clean with the other hand. And your other option is to remove these springs right here. They're quite easy to release. Just make sure you figure out and remember which one is left and which one is right. Otherwise, you could spend a couple minutes trying to put it back together. Can everybody still hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So this releases this guy down here. This is the backup scraper. There's a piece of cardboard just to protect it from shipping. I usually don't mess with that one. And then it's really easy to clean. Clean it all up, spray it down, scrape this off, put it back together. So these go underneath. And that's really all for basic maintenance. Can't think of anything else. Rather than take questions right now, I will just jump into some troubleshooting. I'm going to move some of my stuff around. The troubleshooting usually happens anywhere. It's in the gearing mechanisms. So I'm just going to move the angle here. Okay, so here's your pedal. This is your cranking pedal to crank the belt, the flush pedal. You can see there's a rubber bumper on the bottom of it here. Some of these you can replace if the rubber bumper gets damaged. I think the majority of them now, you can replace this rubber bumper. We supply spares. And there's also a rubber bumper here. There's two, I believe they're 10 mil. Yeah, those are 10 mil back there. Actually, most of this is 10 mil. The conveyor tensioner is also 10 mil here. So those are easily replaced if you look and they're damaged, or it's making they'll be making a bad sound. Like when you go down, it won't be a soft rubber bump, it'll be a clank. And the same thing when this comes back, if this is a very loud and painful clanking sound, then you're probably through the rubber bumper. Seems like those are lasting 3 or 4 years, most sites. Now, if you come to the toilet, there's two potential problems, really not much more than that, in terms of the mechanical side of things. One of the problems will be if this major spring has snapped, which has only happened in 1 out of 250, and it was the first one. And what that looks like is that the toilet conveyor can still be driven by the foot pedal, but it does not self-return. You have to lift it back up. But it still drives the gearing mechanism, which drives the belt and which would move a turd off the belt. So pretty easy. You pull the seat off, you look, you'll see that this would be snapped, somehow released. You pull out a spare, which you have in a handy little toolkit, or you leave a little spares kit on site with each toilet. And then you hook it in to one of the eyelets on one side. And this is its place. No, it's a two-hand job.
Oops.
Okay, we're back in place. And self-returns. Problem 1 has been solved. Problem 2 occurs.
Should I pick up the inReach? Okay, how are you?
Okay, so this mechanism inside here is directly under the gearing mechanism, and it is essentially a ratchet.
Thank you.
There's a black tooth that's being sprung by a small spring, and I'm doing my best. I feel like I'm doing surgery, sending a balloon into someone's vein. So what I'm going to do is release the small spring in order to simulate what would happen if that small spring were to break.
Are you guys gonna go there? Do you guys want to?
And the system does not work at all. You can see the gearing mechanism is not being turned. There's no resistance except to pull the spring back. So pretty easy to resolve. You look down and you would see this black tooth not installed, and you see where it would grab the teeth of that.
The photos are pretty specific if you don't want them.
Someone, a little bit loud in the background. They could mute themselves. They were just talking about an inReach.
Yeah, I'll just flip up. Okay. Yeah.
Not muted.
Jordan,
I just muted PE Woods just in case you were trying to talk. I'm not going to take out this whole tooth. Oh, there's a tooth right there. This is what the spare looks like. Where's the camera? And then there's a teeny tiny little spring that's wound around it. This is the most complicated and tedious part of a service you could do in the field. The key thing to remember if you are doing this, don't lose the parts. Set them out on the ground. You're going to pull out this little cotter pin. You set it down. Now the pin, when you take the pin out to replace the spring, basically the most important thing is to not have the pin come all the way out. Keeping that pin in enough that you can get the spring out, but not all the way, keeps the whole assembly together and lined up, which makes your life way easier. You could fiddle with this thing for 5 minutes to try and line it all up again. So keep the pin in the back sides of those steel plates and replace the spring. Needle nose pliers make it really handy. So I'm going to fiddle with it to simulate replacing the spring. Feed the pin back through. Put your cotter pin in to secure it all. Some of these have push plates. The old ones have push washers, so we supply extra push washers as well. And then the final step is to get the end of the spring back to where it needs to be using needle nose pliers or a bunch of finicky finger small tool work. And it ends up with this teeny tiny little leg through a notch, and that keeps it in place really quite well. If you can see the notch is right here, and there's a small leg of the spring that sticks up, and then you're back into function. Perhaps one final thing would be belt tensioning. If the tension is too loose, the belt is really saggy. You'd see a lot of sag right here. And the main problem with a loose belt is that it just doesn't turn. So you'd crank the foot pedal, the gears would work, but the belt wouldn't move, or the belt would move once out of 5 foot pumps. So you take 2 10 millimeters, and what you need to do is bring the roller closer to the end. So you're tightening this and holding this, or vice versa. And then you do the same thing to the other side. This is not a very precise science. If you tighten it up too much, then you won't be able to pump the foot pedal. So it just won't work. It'll be too tight. Maybe you'd have to jump on it or something. So just loosen it off a little bit until the point where you can, until you can pump it with your foot. So with that said, that's all on the maintenance side that I can think of. There's a few different models out there. I've switched a fair number of these to the most modern system, which is this locking, replaceable and removable system. Some of the other ones have a push washer. When I send spare parts kits, I send usually with both pieces to make sure that it fits whatever model you have. So maybe I'll open it up for questions. Anybody has?
The mesh screening you showed, do we get that from you, or where can we purchase that?
You can buy it from any janitorial supply. Amazon. I buy mine from Uline down here in the United States. So I'm in Seattle, but I suspect you can get them all over the place. They're just urinal filters. I get the deluxe ones that smell nice.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
But they're really strong smelling. So I don't open them up inside my office because they'll smell the whole office out.
Hey, Jeff,
Yep.
do you have a list of what should be in your little fix kit that we should like store up on the mountain or something?
I sell, I can't remember how much. I just put a price together for someone else in BC Parks. I think it was $100. And it comes with, you know, kind of this pack of stuff right here. Some of these little fiddly parts, the supplier in France charges me a lot of money, so I kind of have to do the same. But spare springs, spare washers, you know, everything you need, even if someone really kind of took it apart and tossed out all the little spare parts, I supply enough that someone could almost rebuild most of the connections inside the toilet. And then for a toolkit, it's 5/16 driver, needle nose pliers, and two 10 mils. However you want to do your 10 mil, it could be a socket in a wrench or some way to make two 10 mils. Sort of nice to have a hex key set if you're going to do deeper service, but I haven't really gotten into that. You know, that's like if you're trying to take apart and replace the belt, which hasn't happened ever yet. But when we build them, we need the hex key. Anyone else? Oh, I did this one in 30 minutes. Last time it was 45. The one before that was 60. I'm getting more streamlined. You know, we've got Ben on. Ben's been running the Strathcona ones. Ben works for 43K Wilderness. Maybe Ben, you want to just chime in and add anything that you've found over the years? One of the first high elevation waste away systems, Ben 43K did the construction for, and he's since come up with some of his own building designs out of 43K. But Ben, you got anything to share?
No, I mean, ours have been pretty maintenance or any major maintenance free. Like we've never had any springs breaking. I think our earlier, like our bedwell install, we worked out a few kinks. I think that might have been a different model because that was, well, what was that? That was probably like 6 years ago now, or 5 years ago. So I think you had made some modifications just on the connections on the springs and stuff like that. So yeah, after we did that, I mean the ones up on Forbidden Plateau have been pretty good, and yeah, it's been a good system so far. Our crew, none of our crew was available for this today because they're actually installing the third out of 3 up on the plateau. So pretty much all of the toilets up there are going to be urine diversion after in a couple days they'll be done. So we're pretty stoked about that.
How often are you doing this urine tray servicing?
We're usually doing that once a season.
Okay. And what's your visitation? Are you guessing how many thousand people you get up there every sort of summer season?
Yeah, I mean, each area is a little bit different. I mean, the busiest areas up there are around the trailhead and kind of the accessible areas. And those we don't have the urine diversion toilets there. They're just the standard kind of pump out toilets at the trailhead. But as you get back into the park, I mean, our busiest backcountry campground, Circlet Lake, that, you know, on a busy long weekend, that could have up to probably 200 people like per night.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, users of the toilet, yeah, I mean, it's in the thousands for sure. But there was just a big upgrade there last fall, and they installed the contractor installed 3 of the urine diversion toilets for the one campground. So we're hoping that sorry, I got a truck going by here. we're hoping that because there's 3 up there, that kind of disperses the use between the 3. But I would still say at that campground, if you're having a couple hundred people a night on the weekend, yeah, I mean, those are getting used thousands, a couple thousand times a season probably for each one.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. That still once a year for the urine tray. I mean, usually we start off suggesting every month or every 2 months for a site like that, but you know, it seems so situational dependent. So better safe than sorry to begin with, and then step it back to something like once a year, I guess, from what Ben's got going on there.
Yeah, I mean, the season's pretty short up there. You know, in those further areas back in the park, we're not seeing visitors till probably like early July at the earliest, and then that goes into kind of early October. So July, August, September. Yeah, probably about a 3-month, 3.5 month like busy season. So that's really the main use they're getting. So I think that probably helps. It's not a year-round use on those.
Right. Okay. I see Kevin on there. I'm just pulling in people who I've interacted with personally. Kevin, do you have anything you want to add to the systems that you've bought and installed?
I have a question.
Maybe multitasking. Yeah, go for it.
Unless Kevin wants to chime in. But are you Ben? Are you still flying wastes out? I find that up in Panorama Ridge, our little honey pots fill up quickly, probably more quickly than they can decompose. I don't know if that's common around the table.
Now, explain, what system do you have? It's a waste away or decomposing?
So it's a urine diversion toilet. It was installed in fall of 2017 or 2016.
Okay.
And
Where?
we have up in Panorama Ridge in Golden Ears Park.
Okay.
So it's pretty high elevation. And we flew out 2 of the pots last summer. So from that period of time, the 2 pots, we switched them out and they both filled up.
What are the pots?
The pots, they're like big aluminum tanks.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen photos of those.
Now, is that what they're supposed to be, or is that what we were given? And if that's not what they're supposed to be, is there a recommendation on what they should be?
Well, the cheapest system is just a big white bag. So I use those right there. That's just construction waste, but that's a $30 bag from bagcorp.com. It has you get the right one with cardboard in the side, so it holds its own shape. Now, the strange thing, again, these are so situational because I have a bank of 4 urine diverting toilets with those cubic yard bags up in Zion on the Angels Landing Trail. And there's a lineup to use the bathrooms from 8 in the morning until 8 p.m. And they get used, probably in the last year, they probably got used 1 million times. And there's only 4 bags, and the 4 bags, they lasted for a year and 1 million users.
So do you just scatter the waste afterwards once it's kind of settled out, or do you pull that right out from that area?
Well, it's not me, but the Park Service they used to fly the waste out like a conventional mixed waste barrel fly out thing. But now they just run these these motorized wheelbarrows, and they put the waste on the wheelbarrow and drive it down. And they're having some solid waste company come take it away. But it saves them $30,000 a year not flying 20 loads. They had to shut down the trail, and there's condors in the area, so they can't even fly helicopters anymore.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know why are they filling up so fast. The waste-to-waste system is not geared to decompose. So Ben's systems up in Strathcona, they're a little bit oriented towards a waste away that can decompose because they can put the conveyor into 2 different bags, and they can leave one to sit and potentially decompose away. But the true decomposing systems that I set up have the waste in ground contact. So we dig a vault, surround the vault on 4 sides with retaining wall material, but the ground contact is where the bugs will come up through the soil and physically ingest the waste. If you're inside of a concrete vault or any sort of sealed container, you're not getting invertebrates in there, except for whatever flies land and maggots grow.
Rats that get in there or whatever.
Marmots that are eating it.
Poopy rats. So in a marine environment, if you were to do, would you suggest the waste away, or would you suggest the urine diversion?
My arm. So just in about all situations, I'd go with the decompose for lowest annual waste management cost. And the only reasons to go waste away are very high use, like Zion, Angel's Landing. The waste mass accumulation too fast, to really keep up with on the decomposing side. So that's more than 70,000 users per year per toilet. I would say you're shifting into the waste away. Or it's really high and there is no invertebrate because there's no soil. So Camp Muir up on Mount Rainier, 10,000 feet, rock and snow, no soil, waste away. Longs Peak, Colorado, 11, 12, 13,000 feet. We have 4 up there, tiny bits of soil, but it's just rocks and scrub brush that have managed to last over the storms. Also very high use, and they had a pre-existing pack-out program using llamas. So it was easy to go from heavy, sludgy lead into just a really small, lightweight little bag thing these llamas can carry. The other reason to do a waste away is if some operator like the Alpine Club of Canada is managing, and the Alpine Club of Canada loves flying helicopters. And maybe if they're slinging in a pile of propane or firewood all the time, then fine, just go for the waste away and put it in the bags and get them to fly it out on their backhaul trip. It's a little bit, someone has to come up with a disposal solution back in the parking lot. And that's why a bunch of the BC Park sites like Joffrey Lakes are collecting it in fish totes. So big, hard-sided fish totes so that the pumper truck can jet water into that fish tote directly and suck it straight out. You can't do that with fabric bags. Nobody's tried anyway. And so that'd be one more reason. If you have a pre-existing waste flyout, and this is usually when you switch to a waste away system with urine diversion, you cut the flights down to 1/4 to 1/5 of what it was previously, because that's the urine fraction that just goes in the soil.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jeff.
in Strathcona, we actually haven't had to fly out any of our bags yet. The first one we installed was in 2015 at Bedwell Lakes. And that we got 3 years out of one side. Like Jeff was saying, the design for our toilets, we have two fillable bags. So when one fills up, we can switch the toilet to the other side. And we switched the bag after 3 years. Arguably, we might have been able to get a 4th year out of the one, but we switched over, and now I think we're on year 2 for the second bag. And the hope is that after 3 or 4 years on that bag, we'll actually be able to switch over to the first bag, just because there probably will be a little bit of decomposition there. So yeah, to answer your question, it's working well for us. We collect in those cubic meter white bags as well. But yeah, we haven't actually had to fly out any of our waste at this point yet.
Previously, Ben, how often were you flying barrels of waste from those sites?
Once a year easily. And with the usership we're seeing right now, it probably would have been twice a year up there. So yeah, we haven't flown that particular site for 5 years.
Great. Yeah, some savings, and someone doesn't have to do that nasty job of capping the barrels and slinging them, sucking them out. Happy to hear.
Hey Jeff, I had a question about like I remember you told us I'm up in Strathcona as well, and you said to help decomposition to add some water and a little bit of sort of pond scum and soil and stuff like that, that whatever we could
Totally.
find.
Yeah.
One thing I don't know if you're familiar with this, like blue septibos stuff
Okay.
that I'm showing up there.
Yeah.
But it's something we use in pit toilets to help
Mhm.
those sort of, to knock those down a bit. It's like I can send you product details if you're unfamiliar with it, but I was wondering if what your opinion on that would be. It may be hard to answer if you don't know the product, but like I checked with them and they said it's unreactive with those bags that we use. But we're looking at ways of helping that stuff decompose.
Well, I'm an academic at heart. I have my PhD is in compost science, and during that PhD exploration, I looked at a lot of different inoculum or enzyme-based products.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what this is. It's like an enzyme type thing.
Yeah. So the general, there's probably been no scientific studies on that particular brand or for the particular use of pit toilets. But the scientific literature usually says something to the effect of there's no statistical significant effect of adding some of those inoculum and enzyme products, because the microbial diversity is so rich and so wide in the natural world, and those types of products usually end up being so very specific to a very singular biological process that doesn't end up having a meaningful effect. But that's, if it's not that expensive and to an operator, it seems like it's helping, I would say just make your own decision on it. Now, what is important is to use probably something like that, or even just a simpler chemical process to keep the urine flowing in the urine drain line. So salts can precipitate out of high strength urine. Those are making this gray sludgy stuff. Technically, it might be struvite and different calcium precipitation. If any of you have operated the water lift urinals and you take them apart, you find all that scudge inside. Same thing, and so you can put in an acid cleaner or a basic cleaner, and that product, it might have an acid, it's inside of it too, so it'd be helpful to put into the toilet, and that can dissolve, just physically, chemically dissolve the precipitates by changing the pH, and a lot of those calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, they will enter, their solubility phase at a low pH. So you want to do that every once in a while and flush it with some water to, after you've dissolved it, get it flowing down the pipe and get it out into the soil where minerals, the minerals can be uptaken by bacteria. So short answer to your question, usually there's no scientific literature to support it, but there are a lot of people who say those products work really well. So I can't offer too much more than that.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? And I have recorded this. I feel like only this video is going to get recorded. I don't think it records everybody else, but we shall see when I go and look at it, which I'll have to think about for next time, because it would have been nice to have this one also be recording. So anyway, we'll see, and I'll offer it around. I'll just send the link probably to everybody who's on the email. And happy to answer questions via email, or if you want to call me directly, explain. For a while I was not running Toilet Tech Canada. It's my friend Scott Kerr, and I've taken back ownership of Toilet Tech in the United States after a year and a half of haggling and negotiating with my business partner. I'm now owning it entirely. And I'm working with Wishbone Site Furnishings up in Canada to distribute the behind the wall toilet seat, as well as we've developed a package, a solution for sort of a 3-season toilet where the behind the wall goes into that Wishbone outhouse building. There's 2 designs. One is a forest with a shed roof, and the other is the traditional gable roof that a lot of you have seen your parks for front country wishbones over pits or over vaults. We now have a full package for the decompose and for the waste away using Wishbone. Now this toilet does not, it's probably not going to work in a high snow load area to provide winter access because it's not a sealed building. And that's why I'm building this building back here to make it a fully winterized toilet building, because the Wishbone has a bunch of cracks where snow and spindrift is going to go into the toilet building and fill up this building will fill up with snow. So those are the sort of 2 options for buildings. Wishbones prefab install in a couple hours, and then some more custom solution 43K built buildings, as well as I sell buildings with contractors working up in Canada. All right. Anybody else? We'll say goodbye and adieu.